everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing our quick review for John Wick Chapter 4. Definitely one of the better movies I've seen this year, although that isn't much because we're only at the end of March here. So right before we get into this, if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button, letting me know that you guys like the content that I'm putting out for you guys. And without further ado, let's hop into the review. So let's start talking about the good. My favorite thing about this movie is that it really takes its time with the villain. And I want to use the word villain lightly because it's not necessarily your everyday just, I'm the big bad villain and everyone has to do what I say, because that's not the case here. It's made pretty clear from the beginning of the movie that our main villain is Marchese, I believe is how you pronounce him. He's the French guy, and he basically is like at the top of the high table. You know, he oversees everything. He makes sure that everyone's in line and that no one is breaking the rules. He's a very by the book kind of person, and could care less who you are, but if you even break one rule from the high table, he will come after you, essentially. And that kind of becomes the main motivator in this movie, where it kind of draws that fine line between, yes, here's the high table, but we're also human beings, and we've developed these friendships and relationships through the many years of knowing each other, that I still treat you like a human being even though you're not with the high table. The one person I do really want to talk about, as far as like someone going after John Wick, is Kane, because he clearly has probably one of the most prominent roles in this movie, aside from another character that I'm going to get to in a minute. And he just, from the very beginning, you know, he gets threatened by Marchese, you know, that if he does not take on this mission, that his daughter's life could be in danger. And he obviously does not want that, and that's just kind of how the criminal underworld goes. You know, he's gonna threaten his daughter to make sure he gets what he wants, and of course he does end up doing what he wants, but it's very clear that he doesn't want to do this for his own pleasure, and that he's not looking to gain anything from this. He's strictly doing it because he has to do it. Otherwise, his daughter would not be safe. Going into kind of a little different point, one thing I really noticed about this movie that stood apart from all the other John Wick films is the traveling of this movie. What I mean by that is, in every movie, John Wick does go from place to place, but for me, a lot of times, it felt like those places were too similar in feel. They were physically different. Yeah, you'd see these different like landmarks and this and that, but in this movie they use colors as a way to kind of like indicate where you are. So like the first time we start in New York, and you kind of have like the sunset, and it kind of stays that way for the whole most of the time you're in New York. But then he goes to the desert and it's very sunny out, and it has this very like you know, I don't want to call it like pyramid, like desert kind of feel that movies can have, like The Mummy, for example. Just that kind of like, oh, kind of feel, the pharaohs, the pyramids. But not necessarily like that, just more of like a desert kind of feel. And you clearly know where you are, what this part of the movie is going to be like. And then it goes, I believe it goes to Tokyo or Japan. I forget the exact place that it goes to. And it becomes very clear where you are again. It's very like dark and neon signs, and just not quite like very loud, but it's just known that this is like you know where you are, and you're not confused, and it very much sets the tone for what's going to happen, what kind of weapons, because then they start bringing out like the samurai swords and the ninja stars, and it just makes everything feel more complete, because you know it's not going to be like the rest of the movie. This is the you know, more Japanese centered part of the movie. And then after that, I believe they go to somewhere, I'm kind of forgetting the names of the locations. It's before they go to Paris, and they go to this place with this lady so that she can get the brand on him. And that place has its own feel. That kind of feels more of like a very castle church with like the candles and all of that, and that has its very own distinctive feel, very different from the Tokyo feel, which is something I just really appreciated about this movie. The next person I do want to talk about is the man, he doesn't really have a name in the movie. He just, every time someone asks him his name, he just says that his name is Nobody. And that's just kind of with the trope that they kind of go throughout the movie, talking about. And he's this guy who's just, I guess, just another hunter, but he's really not, because he's very, let's just say, more skilled than the average hunter. And he usually walks around with like this shotgun and a backpack, and then he has a Great Dane with him. And from the moment I saw him in the trailer, I'm like, this guy looks really interesting. He didn't really seem like he was going to be a big threat at first, but just the way he walks around and the way his fighting style is just a little bit unlike something we've seen in the John Wick movies. One scene in particular I remember is when he was like gunning for John Wick, and the one guy came like to shoot him, and his backpack, he like threw it over, because it was on his back, and he threw it over him, and it acted as like a shield, and then he like shot the guy. And throughout the movie you'll see like he does these different combos, like he'll shoot someone, and if he can't get to them, he'll tell his dog to attack them. And it just felt like a really cool way to implement something different that we haven't seen in the John Wick movies before, because it's always been guns or fighting or hand-to-hand combat, and this just felt like another thing that they could have implemented, and it worked really well for me, at least. I'm going to Marchese, the main villain of this movie. I don't have too much to say about him, other than I'm glad he didn't just feel like another generic villain, who's just like, oh, I hate everything and I'm gonna kill him and I'm gonna kill that. And he just felt like, he was very proper, and he, towards the end of the movie, obviously, when John Wick is getting close and, he's about to have this final duel for his life, he makes these arrangements to try and stop John Wick before, sunset, or before sunrise. And he tries everything he can, and he can't do it, and he kind of realizes that maybe it's out of his power. And I kind of like that, because the whole movie he kind of acts as like this overlord of everyone, and he finally gets a little bit taste of his own medicine, which I did enjoy. So it's very clear from the beginning of the movie that the stakes are very high here, and that no one is safe from dying. In fact, I think in the first 15 minutes, Choron, the man who kind of like bellhopped at the hotel in New York, gets killed, surely because John Wick was at their hotel at the end of the third movie, and they see that and they do not like that, so they shoot him on the spot. Rest in peace, Lance Redwick, because I believe he died a couple of weeks ago, which he was in this movie. He had a great final ending. I did really enjoy his performance in the John Wick movies. And so I think that's all I have to say about that specific moment in the movie. So one part of the movie that I did mention earlier in this review is that of like the kind of castle church theme, where he gets captured and he actually almost gets hung. But Katia, she kind of like talks to him, and he's like, I want to challenge Marchese to the high table. And in order to do that, he has to get branded on his wrist, which he needs to be part of a clan. And the only way she'll allow him to be in the clan is to kill the man who I believe killed her father, I believe is who it was, but I could be wrong about that. And so he goes there, and they do this whole like bit where they're playing cards, and then it just kind of turns out into an all-out brawl. And at first I thought that this big mafia boss man wasn't going to be able to take John Wick, but boy was I wrong, because the second he got close to John Wick, he acted very much like a Wilson Fisk kind of character, and just started like, clearly with the strength that he had, started bodying John Wick. And John Wick was not nearly as strong, but he did end up obviously taking him on and then later killing him. Final two things I do want to talk about is just overall a great cinematography in terms of the fighting. One of them I do want to specifically mention is when they were in that house with the guy with the shotgun and the dog, and they did like the overhead view of watching like John Wick go throughout the rooms and stuff. I thought that was a really cool angle. Definitely different. I didn't expect them to go that route, but it was definitely interesting to see. And the final good thing I do want to talk about is the whole entire Paris scene. Just phenomenal. From the moment where Marchese and the criminal underworld, they get on the radio and they raise the bid for John Wick, and then he has people coming out to him like quite literally on the street trying to run him over. And literally from all these different angles, you see people trying to get to John Wick, and he's just struggling with all the cars, and there's just so much happening at once, and you're not sure what is going to happen next. And not only that, but we already know he's on a time crunch and that he has to get to the church. So, and it just becomes a very dire of, okay, we got to kill this person and get on to the next thing, because if not, we're not going to make it there. And that kind of goes into what the whole stairs scene that I do want to talk about in my mixed part. So, getting on with the one mixed aspect of this movie I did have was actually the stairs scene, because I did like the physical action of it, but I did feel that it went on a little too long. And the only reason I don't have this in my bad and it's in my mixed is because I understand why they did this. They wanted to feel that, like, that jumpiness of, hey, you can't spend all this time on this, guys. And then when he kept falling down the stairs, which was pretty funny, so I did enjoy that. It was one of the more comedic moments in this movie. But when he keeps falling down the stairs and then he has to get back up, and then Kane actually appears and, like, kind of helps him get past everyone just to get there, I think with like maybe 2 minutes to spare. Just it put the extra, like, oomph that you needed on that action scene. But again, that's kind of why it goes in my mixed area. But as far as the bad part of this movie, I don't necessarily think that there was anything bad in particular that I think that I could really, like, point out. You know, maybe there were a few moments where but for most of the movie, it just went from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next. And I was very satisfied with, like, the way things happen in the movie and the order that things happen and the way that things happen, because it all fit together really well, and then ended well with, like, a time crunch and getting there. And then not only that, but not just like a regular fight that would be at the end of a John Wick movie, but a duel, a very fair one bullet each duel, something that you would expect only to be coming out of a John Wick movie. And it absolutely killed it. With that said, guys, this is just my general review of John Wick. I will post my Letterboxd review right here somewhere, so you guys can check that out if you want to. And I'm gonna try and get out a John Wick ranking as soon as I can. Obviously, I have a lot of other videos in the works for you guys right now. And just let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see next. And so, until next time, guys, peace, everyone.